Okay, it's 10 o'clock, Chair. Mark, do you want to start recording?
I can confirm we're now live on YouTube.
Lovely, thank you, Mark. So welcome everyone to this virtual licensing subcommittee meeting that is being conducted with members, officers and members of the public at various locations, communicating via audio, video and online. There is also the opportunity for the public and press to listen and view proceedings. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and to confirm that members and officers are in attendance, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to start with the members first. Councillor Allen. Just confirm you can hear. Councillor Allen, you're currently muted.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Nash.
Here.
Thank you.
I am here.
Councillor North.
Here.
Thank you. And Councillor Rice.
Here.
Thank you. And officers, Steve Cobb.
Present.
Molly Shields.
Yeah.
Teresa Campion.
Here.
And Liz DeVere.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. And in terms of the public, I have Sergeant Simon Mullen.
It looks like he might have knocked out.
Okay, I'll come back in a minute. And Tom Hardy.
Yeah, here. I've also got Mick Norgan here, who's one of the Itching Bid directors.
Thank you. I'm just going to wait and see if Sergeant Simon Mullen comes in.
Has anybody got his phone number? Steve?
Yeah, just trying to find it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, he's coming back in now.
Fantastic.
Hello.
Apologies.
That's okay. So I was just doing a roll call, Sergeant Mullen, so we can hear you and you can hear us. So I'll now continue with the proceedings for today's meeting. The meeting consists of 3 voting members with a 4th non-voting participant member, and in today's meeting this is Councillor Mike Rice. In the event that a voting member loses connection, the hearing will adjourn until connection can be restored. If the adjournment exceeds 10 minutes or it is apparent sooner that the reconnection will not be possible, the 4th member will replace the absent member and become a voting member of the subcommittee. If a quorum of 3 members that have been present throughout the hearing is not possible, the hearing will be adjourned. In the event that the applicant loses connection, the hearing will adjourn until connection can be restored. If it becomes apparent that reconnection will not be possible, the hearing will be adjourned to a stated date. In the event that another person that has indicated their wish to speak loses connection, the hearing will adjourn until connection can be restored. If it becomes apparent that reconnection will not be possible, the hearing will be adjourned to a stated date. If another person has indicated that they will not be participating orally in the hearing and lose connection, the chair may decide to continue with the hearing. The subcommittee will undertake their deliberations in private, and the aim is that they will return to announce their determination on the live stream. However, they will not wait until all parties are connected. A copy of the decision will be forwarded to all parties electronically as soon as practical and will be able to be viewed on the Council's YouTube recording and the meeting. If having retired members believe that the deliberations for decision will take too long to avoid parties waiting, they may decide to not to announce it live on the day. If this is the case, an announcement will be made to this effect and the meeting will be closed. The decision would then be announced in writing within 5 working days of the meeting. The hearing is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel and Zoom. If live streaming fails, then the meeting will adjourn for a short period to see if the connection can be re-established. If live stream cannot recommence in a reasonable period of time, then a decision will be made as to whether the hearing will continue or be adjourned to a stated date. Are there any questions before I hand over to the chair? Okay, there's no questions. So Councillor Nash, if you'd like to take over now.
Okay, can I just make sure to avoid any possible noise interference that everybody has their mobile phones and any other devices silenced if possible. And when you're not speaking, please could I ask that you just have, as you all have now, the mute on your systems. Do you want to read out the rules of debate, Matthew?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Chair. So the meeting will follow the hearing procedure as contained within the agenda. If a member of the public wishes to speak, they should use the blue hand request to speak symbol, which is located in the participant section at the bottom of the screen. And this will alert the moderator that you wish to speak. And the moderator will inform the chair of the names of the speakers who should wait to be invited by the chair to address the meeting. If any of the officers need to address the meeting at any point during proceedings to aid discussions, please, I also request that you respectfully interject and await a response before addressing the chair or the panel. So that's it. Like I say, the procedure is contained in the agenda of the report.
Okay, so we'll now be just going to the agenda pack, please, to follow. And I'd just like to welcome everybody to coming along today. And just to introduce ourselves, first of all, I'm Lisa Nash, I'm chairing the committee today. And if my other 2 councillors like to introduce themselves, Daniel first, perhaps.
Hello, I'm Daniel Allen. I'm Vice Chair of Licensing and I am a Letchworth councillor.
Okay.
Hello, Councillor North, representative of Cadwell.
Thank you. And Mike?
Mike Rice, Letchworth councillor.
Thank you. And legal advisor?
I'm Teresa Campion. I'm the legal advisor for Stay.
Oh, thanks, Teresa. And if Steve and team want to introduce yourselves, please.
Morning, I'm Steve Cobb, I'm the licensing manager.
Good morning, I'm Molly Shields, I'm a licensing officer.
Thank you. And I think it was Simon, wasn't it? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, Simon Mullen, Sergeant with Hertfordshire Constabulary, Community Safety Unit.
Thanks, Simon. And have we got Environmental Health Officer?
Hello, I'm Liz DeVere, I'm Commercial Team Manager in Environmental Health.
Thanks, Liz. And Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Hardy. I'm the Town Centre Manager responsible for Hitchin Bid Business Improvement District. And
I'm Michael Norgan. I'm one of the directors of Hitchin Bid.
Okay. So we're going to start with the, if we start with the legal advisor, sorry, Liz. Not Liz, sorry. It's difficult not seeing everybody in here. Just to outline the procedure, please outline the matters for consideration during the course of the hearing.
Okay, the matters for consideration in this case is it's an application to vary a premises licence under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003. There is already a licence in it for this premises, which the licensing manager has quite helpfully provided a summary of the application of what's currently licensed and what is being sought by the applicant, Mr. Hardy, and has basically sets out the various license conditions and times of the licensable activities. This application that Mr. Hardy's put forward is to vary that licence. He has set out his application in his operating schedule and his application in relation to the 4 licensing objectives. There have been the 2 responsible authorities, the police and the Environmental Health Department, have made representations, because unfortunately Mr. Hardy was not able, they were not able to come to some agreement as to licence conditions and concerns raised by both the responsible authorities. So basically the representations made by the police, I think, are Appendix B to the pack, and Appendix D cover the representations made by Environmental Health. But I think the issues are concerning what is contained within the operating schedule and the enforceability of any licence conditions should the licence be varied, as requested by Mr. Hardy. But obviously those, I think, are the main issues for the panel members today.
Thanks, Teresa. So we're going to come on in a moment to look at the licensing officer's report, the applicant's case, then responsible authorities to submit their case, and with closing statements and a conclusion from the legal advisor and any questions. Is everybody happy to proceed on that basis? I'll take that as a yes. Okay, so is Steve, Molly, over to you for the licensing officer's report, please.
Thank you, Chair. As always, it's quite lengthy, so please bear with me. So, good morning. There are no amendments to my published report. However, I do have a number of comments that are relevant to today's hearing. Firstly, the hearing notices for today's hearing were not sent out within the prescribed 10 working days notice. The licensing manager spoke with the applicant, who has agreed to proceed with today's hearing. However, I'd just like to confirm for the record that the applicant is happy to proceed. Mr. Hardy, are you happy to proceed today?
Yeah, I'm happy to proceed, yeah.
Thank you. Also, could the responsible authorities, so Simon and Liz, could you confirm that you're happy to proceed today as well, please?
Yeah, happy to proceed.
Yep, I'm happy to proceed.
Thank you. To assist the subcommittee and all parties, I've summarised the application compared to the current licence and have distributed that to all parties. So hopefully you've all got a copy of that there. As this is an application to vary a premises licence, the subcommittee should only consider the timings and activities applied for that are not currently covered by the existing premises licence. As the existing timings and activities are not to be considered by the subcommittee today, that would be a matter to be addressed at a review hearing if problems were occurring under the current licence. The general principle of a variation application is that the applicant should not ordinarily leave with less than they started with. For example, should you be minded to refuse this application, the existing licence will remain intact. The licensing process should determine how the use of the premises can be managed and what activities, if any, are appropriate in relation to the narrow considerations of the 4 licensing objectives. Any matters not relating to one of the licensing objectives are not relevant to today's hearing and must not be discussed or considered. All 4 licensing objectives have been raised in representations. So the prevention of crime and disorder. This relates to matters of crime and disorder on or in the immediate vicinity of the premises, which fall within the control of the licence holder. Conditions should not be placed on the licence holder for patrons beyond the immediate vicinity of the premises. However, that does not mean that the licence holder has no responsibility for its patrons. If the behaviour or likely behaviour of patrons that can be causally linked to the premises in causing problems beyond the control of the licence holder, a subcommittee would be entitled to refuse the application. Public safety. This relates to the safety of persons on the premises or in the immediate vicinity, not just people attending the event, but also people visiting the town centre for other unrelated purposes, such as shopping, carrying out their business, or just passing through. The prevention of public nuisance. This relates to the nuisance coming from, apologies if you can hear that squeaking in the background. The dog's got into the garden, do apologise. So the prevention of public nuisance. This relates to the nuisance coming from or associated with the premises and can cover matters of noise, light, litter or odour. Although this objective has been raised in a representation, the Council's licensing policy states that the lead responsible authority for public nuisance should be the Environmental Protection and Housing Team. However, the subcommittee should have regard to the fact that they have not made a representation. The protection of children from harm. This relates to the protection of children using the premises both morally and physically. For example, children should be safe on the premises and should not be subjected to anything inappropriate to their age group, such as age-related films, products, alcohol consumption, etc. This applies to the children attending events or on the premises for other unrelated purposes. The subcommittee will have read in my report that the applicant inquired about amending the application after the public consultation had ended, but I refused this request. Significant amendments should ordinarily be submitted for public consultation as, consultation, as the amendment may give rise to representations that were not relevant to the original application. That said, the subcommittee are entitled to take whatever action they feel appropriate to promote the 4 licensing objectives based on the evidence at the hearing. Therefore, it is within your remit to accept amendments if you believe they will address your concerns. With regard to the representations from the police, the subcommittee will be aware that the representation requests additional conditions and revised timings rather than refusal of the application. It is for the subcommittee to explore further during this hearing. However, it should be assumed that in the absence of these conditions and the revised timings, the police's view would be that the application should be refused. Additionally, one of the police conditions refers to an event management plan. The subcommittee should have regard to paragraphs 8.8 to 8.10 of my report that refers to EMPs, particularly 8.10 in terms of the wording to make an EMP condition transparent and enforceable. With regard to the representation from environmental health, the recommendation is that the application should be refused due to insignificant information in its operating schedule addressing public safety concerns. Paragraph E2.7.1 of the Council's policy expects applicants to undertake a public safety risk assessment. Further information is also supplied in the Council's policy paragraph E2.7.2. The full wording of these paragraphs is included in my report. This approach is supplemented by the statutory guidance paragraphs 2.8 to 2.9. Again, the full wording is included in my report. Further guidance on the inadequacy of operating schedules is given in paragraphs 8.3 and 8.4 of my report, which are particularly relevant to this application. Finally, returning to event management plans. It may assist the subcommittee to know that an EMP conditions attached to a licence requiring responsible authorities to consider the specific details of each individual event, and the event only be allowed to proceed if no responsible authority objects to the EMP. These have worked well across many events throughout North Hertfordshire. This approach ensures that the appropriate assessments are undertaken for each individual event by the licence holder prior to the scrutiny by the responsible authorities. Whilst the lack of objection to an EMP by a responsible authority doesn't imply approval of its consent, as liability for the event lies with the licence holder. It signifies that the responsible authority believes that the EMP is appropriate for an event of the nature assuming that a licence holder delivers on the actions proposed within the EMP. As part of each event-specific EMP, the licence holder would be able to substitute an event-specific licensable area plan for the event, which may address some of the concerns relating to the size of the whole of the licensable area. Myself and the licensing manager are happy to answer any specific questions now or at any time during this hearing. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, thanks, Molly. Simon, have you got any questions at all from the licensing officer or of the licensing officer?
No questions, thank you very much.
Okay, and Liz, have you got any questions at all, please?
No, I haven't got any questions.
Lovely. And Tom, did you have any questions?
No, we don't have any questions.
Okay. Have either of my councillor colleagues got any questions at all at this stage? Sam?
Thank you, Chair. It's just one very quick question which relates to the EMP suggestions within your report. Living in Hitchin, I know that regularly more than 500 people attend the town centre on a daily basis. So can I just confirm, practicality wise, are we saying that an EMP would be required for each 24-hour period, or how long does an EMP notice last if there were to be an event occur in the town centre? Could an EMP cover a year or something like that? How would that work practicality wise?
Would you like me to answer that, Chair?
Yes, please, Steve.
An EMP ordinarily, Councillor North, is event specific. So the idea is that rather than try and come up with a licence that covers all bases with a raft of conditions that may or may not apply to the event based on the nature of the event, the idea is to produce an event specific management plan that will control that specific event, so that the controls on the event will be tailored specifically for the nature of the activities and the timings, and won't be overly restrictive. If you look to put event management planning for the whole year, you'd almost have to assume worst case scenario, and that would then perhaps become overly burdensome for smaller events.
Thank you, Steve. Did you have any more questions, Sam?
Thank you, Chair. No, not for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mike, do you have any questions at all?
Do you mean me, Chair?
Yes, I do, because I appreciate if one of us gets knocked out, you'll be one of the ones making the decision.
Yeah. I thought normally I didn't ask any questions.
No, I think because I think it's appropriate in case one
Chair,
of us.
may I just interject?
Oh yeah, of course you can, Steve.
Just for some advice for you to make a ruling, Chair, but ordinarily under the Licensing Act, a subcommittee consists of 3 members and 3 members should participate. The idea of Councillor Rice hearing all of the information is for him to step in if necessary, and at that point he would be able to ask questions of all of
Right.
the
Oh, okay.
parties.
Lovely. Thanks, Steve. That's great. Okay. So now it's, thanks, Mike. Now it's just over to Tom then. Would you like to present?
I don't
your
have any
submission?
questions either. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Daniel. Gosh, I obviously can't count. so apologies. Over to Tom. Would you like to present your submission to the subcommittee, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So I thought I'd want to start just by making people aware of what the Hitchin BID, the Hitchin Business Improvement District, is. We're funded and led by businesses. So everything we do in the town centre is to try and promote our objectives, which are to keep the town a vibrant, clean, safe and well promoted space for the public to enjoy safely and businesses to benefit from. We usually run very small family friendly community events and cultural events in the town centre. We focus on supporting local businesses and encouraging their involvement. So everything we do is for the good of the town and for the good of the economy. We work very closely on our events that are above 500 people with NHDC, Herts County Council, police and attend safety advisory group meetings. And I'm in regular contact with members and officers as and when we need to obtain advice on safety, waste, and various aspects. So we've for over 10 years that the BID's been around, we've been running safe and carefully managed events in the town centre. We ensure that all of our vendors have risk assessments, public liability insurance, and we present an events management plan for each of these larger events in the town centre. Now, I've read the representations and spoken to my directors and some of the businesses, and actually we, given the process that we've been through, we would be happy to adjust the geographical area of the sale of alcohol to just the marketplace and the high street, and any event, like you said, that's over 500 people at any one time, to issue a comprehensive events management plan and risk assessment to the safety advisory group. I think for us that's best practice anyway. We're not in the market of getting a bad name for ourselves in a town centre or running anything that directly competes with existing businesses as well. So we're not in the market for doing any of that. We with our including our events management plan and going over some of the statements for crowd safety, we do have security that we bring in for these types of events, and we work closely with the CCTV, and we have our own radio systems that we bring in for our rangers and the security, the additional security that we have. For our stall holders, we always have adequate space between shop frontages and the stall holders that are out on the highway, and that's partly to ensure that shoppers and people that are passing through can pass through safely during the event, but also that the businesses are the ones that are leading and wanting these events to happen. So it's within our interest to have as much space as possible for the public to do their shopping as well as enjoying the community events that we put on. We have like I said, we have our day rangers who work 6 days a week and additional security for these types of events, which is included in our events management plan. We put road closures in place for some of the areas, for some of the events that we put on. and we, where are we? So with running water for stallholders, we all of our stallholders have to abide by quite strict terms and conditions that are obviously taken from recommendations from the Safety Advisory Group, but also our own. Some of the conditions for food stalls include running water and having a running water vessel available for proper cleaning. And we only have alcohol that's in conjunction with existing food. So if we were to have a Christmas event, for example, we would have lots of food stalls with a couple of mulled wine and things like that. So we never look to have an event that solely focuses on alcohol consumption. It's always a family friendly or community event that we put on, and with food making a big feature. Our recommendations is that we reduce the area down to the marketplace and high street. They're the areas that's the area that we use on a regular basis for these types of events. And I'm happy with the existing conditions that are in the license, that we've been in talks with the police and licensing with before we submitted the application. And also, you know, I was looking through the report from the council, and it's good to see that on B10 of the licensing policy that the council will seek to encourage cultural and community events in the district by allowing appropriate use of its own public spaces and encouraging town centre managers to obtain premises licences for the town centre to remove the burden of community groups and having to obtain their own permissions. I think that's a big thing for us. We have lots of different pockets of events that happen throughout the year, and we have found that by the time we get to Christmas, we've actually run out of temporary events notices. So to have this in place would be a big help. I think that's everything. Do you want to add anything else?
No, I think it's going okay at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Tom. That's fantastic. I was just going to ask myself, actually, so because you mentioned that you'd have road closures in place on occasion. So presumably, if Herts County Council refused a road closure, you wouldn't go ahead with the events?
No, absolutely not. No, we for our events, because of the high-risk buildings in the centre of the town centre, we tend to put in a Police and Town Clauses Act closure, which means that we're not actually blocking the road with physical obstructions. We're doing it to ensure that there's no traffic coming through while there's people in the streets. But yeah, no, we wouldn't go ahead with an event if we weren't successful with a road closure.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Daniel, have you got any questions to ask of Tom?
Not at the moment, Chair, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And Sam?
One very quick one, Chair, and that's the suggestion that we should change the geographical remit of this application. In my view, that completely changes the nature of the application that's been submitted. So is that something that the applicant wishes to say that is what the face of this application? If so, would it not be easier to submit a new application rather than continue with this one?
Okay, Tom?
Well, my suggestion is to reduce the geographical area of the sale of alcohol to the marketplace and high street, and keeping the current geographical area for the existing premises license the same.
Okay, and would you like to comment, Steve? Please.
Thank you, Chair. I understand Councillor North's concern, and I think that if the application was being restricted to the marketplace and the high street and all of the remaining areas were no longer being used, that would be a fundamentally different application. And I think the committee would be perfectly right to consider refusing it on the basis that they would like to see a new application reconsulted amongst all of the parties. But as I understood it, and perhaps Mr. Hardy could confirm, the overall footprint of the application remains. The only change is the licensable activity of sale of alcohol is just being restricted to High Street and Marketplace. All of the regulated entertainment for all of the other streets, I believe, are still remaining. So on that basis, bearing in mind the advice from the licensing officer, I think you would be within your right to proceed on that basis.
Yeah, Tom, would you come back to Steve, please? Is that the case? Just to confirm.
Yeah,
that's the
that
case.
is exactly, that is the case. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Simon, have you got any questions to ask the applicant, please?
Hi there. Good morning, Tom. You mentioned, well, obviously we've spoken about events and the number of people. Just a question: how would you, in the build up to an event, determine whether or not there would be less or more than 500 people in attendance?
Well, we've got quite a lot of experience of running different types of events in the town centre, and using social media and the way we market an event and the type of event that we put on, we can pretty well determine the sorts of numbers we would get. If we were to put on a food festival, for example, versus a sort of community day with a few stalls, we've seen a pattern over the last 10 years of what types of events attract certain types of numbers and how we promote it. Obviously, you know, with all town centres, there's no absolute sure way of knowing exactly how many people you would get at an event, but the types of events that we put on and the way we market it and how much interest we get from it gauges usually with us what the numbers of people we're going to have.
Thank you. And what I mean, that's assists with the number of people who are attending with an intention to attend your event. What about other persons who would already be in the town centre who would technically be part of your 500 because of their location?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if we were running an event that we thought was going to be close to 500, then we would put in an events management plan anyway, because, you know, we don't want to risk there being more people or sort of an event that's more popular than we expected, and to not have an events management plan in place. As any event that we do, we have risk assessments and plans in place to ensure that we have the correct waste facilities, security for any event that we put on. So, you know, we are very aware that the town centre is a public space. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'm just wondering, because I think I see what you're saying. Like there are some events which you would know are lower risk, and they may be your food festival type things or something similar. So it's almost regardless of the number of people, the type of event is more determinable to move forward without an EMP. Is that a fair way of interpreting it?
I don't understand.
So you mentioned there's different types of events, you know what to expect, and I'm just wondering if actually the type of event as well as the number of people should be a factor in determining whether or not an EMP should be excuse me, should be considered.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we change our types of events every year on whether they've worked, whether they haven't worked. And you know, for example, this year we were supposed to be going with a soapbox derby and a Hitchin Pride event. If we were to go ahead with that this year and we didn't feel that it was successful or the businesses weren't happy with it, then we would then look again, like we do in October, at different types of community events, different types of promotions.
Thank you. You mentioned, I think it was when you were referring to the Christmas lights switch on, you said you work closely with CCTV. How do you do that? What do you do with CCTV?
So our rangers, our day rangers and our security team that we have on Fridays and Saturday nights, they have a radio that's connected to CCTV headquarters.
Do you get in touch with them in the prior to your events, or is it more of a on the day casual attention? Do you contact them in advance?
Yeah, we let them know the events are happening, and if there's any issues that arise, we're in constant contact with them to keep an eye on people and manage situations. Yeah.
Thank you. And you've referred to road closures, and you mentioned the PCA road closures, and I think you said that you don't actually close the road; you just use it to stop traffic coming through. How do you stop traffic coming through?
Oh no, so we do put a barrier across.
Right. Okay.
But it's a movable barrier.
Right.
So if there was an emergency vehicles to get through could easily get through. But we do put a barrier there so that there isn't any traffic able to come through. But we don't block the highway. So if in the event of an emergency, police, ambulance and fire can get through.
Okay, good. That's it question-wise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. And Liz, have you got any questions of fact for Tom, please?
Hello, Tom. I have got a couple of questions. With the road closure, is that going to be for all the events where you're selling alcohol, or just the ones that are over 500?
We take a view on it event by event. So if we were to have something small that's actually in the marketplace itself, in the square, then we don't tend to close the road. If we're having stalls going down the high street, we will. And if we're having stalls that are out on the highway, so on the ring road that goes around the market square, we do, yeah.
Okay, and I appreciate you're going to reduce the area now, but you say you've got a lot of experience how many people at an event, and then you've got marshals in place. What actually is the remit if you've got alcohol sales going on and things? You get an event that's attended a lot better than you thought it would be, and perhaps it turns into not quite such a family event. How we control that?
Well, we already have security that we bring in for events that have more than 500 people. We don't promote our events as excessive drinking or events that any event really that would go against public safety or upset businesses. We don't tend to do, and we are focusing a lot more on having alcohol as a real sort of subsidiary to what's already happening. The main event being, for example, Pride, with some stalls with an alcohol cellar. So it's we do really push the fact that they are family-friendly events and community events for people. But yeah, I mean, if we had a food festival, for example, as a rule, we would put in additional security just because we have a large number of food stalls and some alcohol in between. So we do just take it on event by event basis.
Okay, and what do your security and your marshals do if people are misbehaving as your patrons? Because I'm just thinking it's such a large space, although it's been reduced, and there's lots of entrances and exits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our security would, in the event of somebody misbehaving, would stop the alcohol seller, for example, selling them any more alcohol. The people that are selling alcohol at these events follow very strict guidelines in themselves on selling to people that are intoxicated, and they follow the rules of our event. So if they were told not to serve anyone again, then they wouldn't.
And then if we have got people misbehaving, how would you stop people that aren't necessarily your patrons? So someone wants to pop their cat to the vets, or they're going out for a nice meal at 6 o'clock in the evening, but not necessarily attending your event. How would you make sure they weren't affected?
Well, with the road closure, it's difficult because, you know, when we shut the road, we can't have members of the public coming through. But people walking through, I mean, like I said, we have security presence, we have ranger presence around the town, and we report issues to CCTV and the police if they are around. So yeah, I mean, we just take it on a case-by-case basis. With it's a difficult one because it is a public space and people can walk through, and it's like with any town centre or city centre, you just have to manage each situation as it comes, and whether it's an issue that needs police assistance, or whether the security can use their training to be able to deal with that individual or that group of people to calm them down or move them on, and then they will.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
As how the town centre usually runs, anyway, we would have probably 2 daytime rangers around on events. So there's 2 daytime rangers around. We would have additional security where they're in constant contact by radio with each other and liaising with the relevant authorities. So if there are troubles, so you get troubles in town with shoplifting, the rangers are in contact with the police and dealing with the relevant authorities to deal with any issues there. As the licensing premises license holder, Tom would then be in charge of all the premises licensees there. And as we're all governed by our licenses anyway, we have to abide by those rules. Otherwise, we'd have to be closed down or we'd be taken to review. So because we're set up with a premises license, we are controlled, and we would then be controlled by Tom himself, who is then ultimately responsible.
Okay, Tom. And then a question which is very relevant to now, but it doesn't look like it's going away. A lot of your businesses, as you know, are now having queues outside because of social distancing and COVID. And I know in particular the bank right on the corner of the market has got quite big queues outside. I assume that goes on a Saturday morning if they're open. How will you ensure that people queuing for shops aren't affected by your events that are going on?
We've done loads of work with Herts County Council on this. We're moving forward with an experimental traffic order on the High Street. It is shut 7 days a week at present, 10 till 5. I've been dealing with huge numbers of challenges with queues around the town centre. We would, at an event in the current climate, the event would be very, very different to how it would normally be run outside of a pandemic anyway. We just wouldn't put stalls around high queue areas, and we know the high queue areas in the town centre, like Boots, like Greggs, like HSBC. So in the current climate, we probably wouldn't be looking to put stalls outside any areas that have queues.
Okay. And would you barrier off queue areas so that at least if people coming in and going from the market square, they're not going to interfere with queuers? Or
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got barriers. We've got barriers out. We've got barriers out in the town already that highways have put in. We've got the high street shut, so the pathway is now extended into the highway, so people can walk in the road. But yeah, we would definitely, in the current situation, completely rethink the way we run events to make sure that, I mean, at the moment, it's talking to other town centres, they're looking at postponing events all the way up until November and reviewing it then. So it's it's very difficult to run an event and try to attract lots of people, but then run it safely in this current climate.
And I just put a little bit on my representation about people bringing items like foldable chairs to events, because once you get quite a big crowd, plus you've got your shoppers in there, they can become quite an obstruction. Have you got any comments on that?
Yeah, so when we're running an event, a larger event, we do have we do put out some seating areas. So for the food festival, we actually had a tent that we had a communal seating areas already laid out for people. We haven't found in all the years that we've been running the food festival that people tend to bring their own foldable chairs, but we have security and day rangers that can politely ask them to move to another location that's more suitable, or remove them completely.
Okay. I don't think I've got any other questions. Thank you very much, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Liz and Tom. I'd just like to ask as well, actually, Tom, because you mentioned about the sale of alcohol, and you said that if somebody was intoxicated, you would stop the seller selling the alcohol, but surely they should have their own alcohol license. Is that not the case?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, we would step in as well to remind them, but all our alcohol sellers have to follow their own guidelines on selling to anyone that's intoxicated. Challenge 25. There's a huge list that we send them that they have to abide by.
But do they have their own alcohol licenses?
Yeah, exactly. So they have their own alcohol license. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Chair, can I just clarify a point on that, please?
Please do.
Yeah, you've raised a good point. You would expect somebody with a personal license probably to be in charge of each of the areas that was selling alcohol. But ultimately, as the premises license holder, it would be Hitchin Initiative that are responsible for any breaches of the license, not the individual alcohol seller.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely, and that would work. That would work both ways. So we would expect the license, the personal alcohol license holder, to abide by the rules that are in place around serving somebody that's intoxicated. But at the same time, we may help by putting security close by the stall to make sure that that the individuals aren't trying to break the rules.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, and thank you, Steve. Yeah. Daniel, have you got any questions at this point, please? Oh, sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
Can I ask? Yes. Do the individual stalls have direct access to the rangers? Are they given any form of radio access so that they can let the stalls know about problems, and so they can let the rangers and the police know about problems?
Yeah, we've got the rangers are mobile around the area that alcohol is being sold, and security as well. So they for these events. So yeah, although there's no direct radio contact, but we have in the past, if we have one, for example, if you had one stall holder that was selling alcohol, we would give them a radio. But if there's sort of smaller ones around, we would make sure that the security and the rangers were constantly monitoring the whole area.
Thank you. Any other questions, Daniel?
May I ask a WhatsApp group for the separate events to make sure that everybody had that connection to the police? So if you have something happen in the market square where the rangers are, but they need to know let another alcohol selling person know at the other end of the town where you have the alcohol license, to allow that to be passed on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, to give all alcohol sellers one of our town centre link radios to be in touch during the event.
Thank you both. And Sam, have you got any questions at all, please, at this point?
Not at this point, Chair, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sam. So we're now going to move on to ask the responsible authorities to submit their cases. And I'll start with Simon on behalf of Hertfordshire Constabulary. Please, can you present your submission to the subcommittee?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So first of all, I just would like to clarify one aspect of my representation. I have put forward some conditions, a list of conditions which I feel are required as part of this license. However, I just want to clarify on that I feel like no matter what, they are conditions which are necessary for this license to be granted in any circumstances. But part of my representation is about the lack of detail in the operating schedule by the applicant. So dependent on the extra information that would be included, it'd be hard to determine what else would be needed on a basis by that. Does that make, hopefully that makes sense? So it brings me on to my representation. So for the operating schedule, I feel like there is there's a lack of detail in the application to explain what kind of events or what nature of events this license is going to be used for, because in its current guise, it could effectively turn the Hitchin Town Centre, or with the amendment proposed by the applicant, the High Street and the Marketplace, into a big outdoor pub. There's nothing really stopping the license in its current guise from operating 7 days a week up till 8 o'clock on weekdays, 10 o'clock on weekends, selling alcohol and having music. My concern isn't that Tom would let that happen, but that this license is a perennial license. That this license could quite easily outlive Tom, and someone else with different intentions could utilise it for that effect. Although I do appreciate this application, this hearing is based on the current applicant's wishes, it does leave a significant gap in how the license can be used, and effectively requires a lot of trust for a lot of risk to be mitigated. From a sorry, bear with me one moment. So the application includes in its operating schedule, it states it repeats the reliance on town centre rages, and they have been brought up a few times in the hearing so far as well. The police have experienced a couple of occasions where the town centre rangers have been in attendance at an issue and just basically witnessed what was happening and waited for police to attend. So I'm a bit concerned that there's going to be a bit too much reliance on the town centre rangers as a full sense of security underpinning the upholding of crime and disorder objective, and actually them being a conduit for the police to resolve issues. So I'd like to see a bit more surety from the applicant within the crime disorder objective in the operating schedule as to how he expects to manage potential disorder or disorder, either from people attending his event or, like Liz has mentioned, people not necessarily attending his event but people passing through causing disorder. I think that is a relevant matter because the applicant has applied for this license to go on quite late, particularly on weekends, where Hitchin, particularly the town centre, is quite a vibrant nighttime economy area. So there is very likely to be passing traffic by people who are already somewhat started or already intoxicated, being attracted to the events which the applicant has arranged. This is a application for on sales only. Now, I'm mindful of the new business and planning bill, which effectively relaxes off sales for all licensed premises. However, this is a temporary measure spanning another 13 months, which this license will outdate. And given particularly this is a public area, there is no information within the license about how the applicant or any of the representatives of the license will facilitate a prevention of off sales being utilised within the licensed area. And don't get me wrong, I given it's a public space, I see the difficulty, but that is something I feel needs clarifying, because this isn't a pub where you've got one entrance, one access, and it's essentially, you know, and it being a private property, there would need to be some form of consideration around that. One of my principal concerns with this license was the times of the licensed activity. The applicant has requested that sale of alcohol up to 10 o'clock at weekends. This crosses over with the nighttime economy in the Hitchin Town Centre, and I do have concerns that if there were events within the marketplace and any of the other areas where you get the passing traffic for people socialising on a weekend, that there is going to be an increased potential for disorder because of the attraction that, depending on what the event is, that it might provide. And I think that leads on to one of my other concerns, is that this is a wide license. We don't quite know what kind of events that this license is to be used for. Tom's given a couple of examples: Hitchin Light Switch On and Street Food Monthly. However, he's also mentioned that these change quite widely on a yearly basis. So it's difficult at this moment to anticipate the risk of you know, people passing crime and disorder, because we just genuinely don't know what events this license is going to be used for. Okay. And to clarify, Steve, licensing manager Steve, has mentioned that actually the EMP is a useful tool to facilitate a bespoke approach to managing each different events. However, this is particularly around alcohol related events. I'm not here trying to suggest that all licensed activity we need to know about it in the future. I think there's plenty of community style and community based events where that is an absolutely appropriate approach to have. However, given the public space aspect of this, I think there needs to be a different consideration when alcohol is considered as part of the event, which is why I think that would be helpful to know a better specific about the nature of the events that the alcohol aspect of the license is going to be used for. Okay. So I mentioned in his summary earlier that the bid do not promote their events as drinking and focused events. I would agree with that. Hitchin bid put on family-based, community-based events, and as good as the intention is behind it, people who want to party will find a party. So it could be a fairly innocuous, it could be a charity based event, but people who see that there's something going on in the town centre, you know, will use that opportunity to let loose to their own standards. So I again, I don't want to I wouldn't want the applicant to think that the intention behind an event is enough of a determination to not mitigate risk. Hopefully that makes sense. So, sorry, one moment. Recently, Hitchin Bid have begun their alfresco dining in the town centre, which we've seen has been quite popularly shared on social media. One of my concerns around this is that this has gone ahead without the completion of either the pavement licence through the local council or the cafe licence through the county council. Yet the bid have gone ahead and started retailing that business anyway. That's left me with an uncomfortable feeling that this license, that there is an intention from the management, that I won't say an intention, but there is a lack of regard for the rules that might be included in and around licensing. The reason why we do this is because.
Sorry, can I just quickly interject there?
No, I'm gonna.
I can't. Okay.
Well, we ask questions at the end. Is that all right? Sorry, one moment. So yeah, there is. I've got concerns that there is going to be a deviation from either the limitations of the license or the nature to which the license will be used. So going back to issuing this license in good faith with a handshake agreement on the type of events that this license is going to be used for, I have concerns that might remain in future times. Lastly, one of the areas of the license, now again this changed a little bit because of the applicant's offer to change an aspect of the alcohol licensing. However, it is still going to be a licensed area for other regulated entertainment. Bancroft Park does have a children's area, and it is very much a family area. Even if there are no alcohol sales in that area, it could very easily facilitate a music-related event for which which would attract the sale of alcohol through other means. Which, given that the event would be centralised by the event manager, i.e. the license holder, I would like to see some form of consideration within the operating schedule for the protection of children from harm.
Thank you, Simon. Was there any other points you wanted to raise?
No, that is it. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And if you could just hang on for one moment, please, Tom, and we'll go to questions, first of all, of fact from Liz. Have you got anything from the environmental health perspective to ask Simon?
No, I don't have anything to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, did you had some comments, I believe?
Yeah, I'll start quickly by the mention of the cafe license in the marketplace. We followed all the correct processes for this, and I spoke to Chris Davis, who is the network manager responsible for these cafe licenses over at Hertfordshire County Council. He emailed, because I wanted to make absolutely sure that we were doing everything correctly, to say that we are able to start our event from the 27th, and they will be issuing they'll be issuing a license retrospectively, and we're in constant liaison with Hertfordshire County Council on the license, which they have said that we can carry on with. We can carry out the cafe license and have the license issued retrospectively. So we've had the go ahead from the county council. We haven't done this without permissions. I wanted to mention the restriction of events. The conditions, because we had a consultation with the police and licensing before the application went in. The restrictions were to have 12 events per year, and in the current conditions that were proposed, to have no more than 10 vendors at any one time. Now, because of the reduction in geographical area, I would be happy to halve that to 5 for the area, to control. Yeah, because obviously it's just going to be the marketplace and the high street, but restricting the number of events per year, as opposed to naming what type of events there are, would allow us to be able to make decisions in October on what we're going to be having in our events plan. With the mention of the rangers, yes, the rangers are there to observe.
Can I just interrupt a minute? Sorry, Tom.
Yeah.
We appear to have lost Councillor Allen, so can we not proceed until he's back?
He's back.
Yeah, he's been gone a while, so Councillor Allen may have missed some of what you've said. So, for the interests of transparency,
okay,
could you recap so Councillor Allen's aware of what he missed while he temporarily dropped out?
I have been watching it on YouTube while I dropped out.
So you can just confirm you haven't missed anything?
I can confirm I haven't missed anything. I've been watching it on YouTube while I dropped out.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, Tom.
Going with the rangers, we yeah, they are there to observe and report, and they're in contact on a daily basis with the police and CCTV for events, the 500 plus events that we put on. We will bring in additional security that have the necessary communication with the public and be able to deal with situations as they arise. We have terms and conditions for stall holders about the sale of alcohol, and obviously they will have to follow strict rules on who they sell to and selling to people that are intoxicated. The proposal, I wasn't sure because I think Steve mentioned it at the start that we're not able to reduce what's currently there, but the conversation is to add alcohol onto marketplace and high street. Is that correct?
Steve, thanks.
Okay. The clarity I was offering to Councillor North earlier was he quite rightly said if you was drastically changing the application and it hadn't gone out to consultation, that there would be an element of doubt of whether we should be proceeding on that basis, because the people that have chosen not to object based on the application that you've put in. The clarification that I gave is you wasn't changing the overall footprint of the event, you were reducing the areas in which a certain licensable activity, the sale of alcohol, could take place. That said, as the licensing officer said at the beginning, whilst you can't voluntarily make sweeping changes to this now, the legislation actually says the subcommittee can take whatever action they feel is appropriate. So if they thought it was appropriate to reduce your application in order to be able to grant it, they would be able to do it. But I don't think we should be playing about too much with the overall footprint of the event, given that that's what the people that have chosen not to object have based their assessment on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, we run all of our events with health and safety considerations, and we will have events management plans in place which will cover all aspects of the event, all the way from waste to security, public safety, stall holders, and that will be put to the safety advisory group. So I think that I understand Simon's concerns around, I'm here now promoting what we should be doing, but there could be other people in the future that wouldn't have the same aspirations. And I think that having the conditions of restricting the number of events per year would actually promote that that objective, because we would then be anyone that takes over from me in the future would still be restricted by those same rules.
Or the licensee would be as well.
The licensee,
premises licensee, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Right. Daniel, did you have any questions?
No further questions at this time. Thank you.
And Sam?
Two very quick questions. The first one, is there a PSPO in place in Hitchin Town Centre, or are there any plans to have one in place? So
I can answer that there isn't one, but I wouldn't be able to answer whether or not there are plans to. That would be a council decision and council power, but I know how long they take, the amount of consultation that goes into them. So I would suggest that certainly it's not happening in the near future, because I think I would probably know that there would be considerations.
Cool. And the second question, have you had sight over any of the security measures that are expected to be put in place by the applicant for any events that were to occur? So for example, what security team they would have in place, anything like that?
No, I mean, I'll go back to the application, which says work closely with police, work closely with town centre rangers. I think that a significant event that would be expected to be in the event management plan, because that would have to be bespoke on the event. However, with the expectation that the police and town centre rangers are to work closely with the applicant, that puts for me, that's a bit of an unenforceable aspect of the operating schedule, because it requires us and the rangers to uphold that objective, to uphold that condition. If for any reason that the town centre rangers aren't available or refuse to, I don't know what the future may hold, but all of a sudden that becomes an unachievable condition. I think from a security perspective, something a bit more objective needs to go in there.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Sam. So now just move on to Liz on behalf of the NHDC Environmental Health to present your submissions to this.
Yeah, sorry to butt in.
Sorry, no, go on. Do, Steve.
With your permission, ordinarily I'd save this to perhaps closing statements, but it was something that Sergeant Mullen raised that the committee may or may not be interested in. So I'll just put it out there in case you want to look at it further. Sergeant Mullen mentioned the new Business and Planning Act that automatically confers a right of off sale to any premises that currently has an on sale. 2 points relevant to this application. Firstly, that automatic right to an off sale only extended to premises that were in existence with an effective licence at the point the Act was passed. So there would be no ability for this premises licence to be used for off sales. However, it does pose a problem that hasn't been mentioned yet, insofar as if this licence was being used for the sale of alcohol on the premises, there is an implied need for the licence holder to ensure that no alcohol that they have sold is taken over the premises. So it might be that the subcommittee want to look into the fact that with all of the other premises in Hitchin being able to sell for off sales and people walking around the town with glasses, how are they going to address the security concern that where did that glass come from? Was it sold by Hitchin Initiative, in which case it can't be taken off of the premises, or was it sold by somebody else so it could be taken off of the premises? I'm not suggesting that the subcommittee explore it, but I think it's something that you may wish to decide whether or not you wish to explore.
Thank you, Steve. So yes, just moving on to Liz then, please, on behalf of North Herts District Council Environmental Health.
Thank you. I appreciate that the application has changed slightly now because Tom's reduced the area and there's now suggestion of reducing events to 5 a year. However, I still don't have an understanding of how the applicant is going to prevent people who aren't attending the event as a patron being affected by people who've perhaps had a little bit too much to drink, maybe have been drinking since early in the morning and are continuing to drink at 6 o'clock at night, and somebody chooses to walk through to have a nice meal and are getting jostled and hit by people who are perhaps misbehaving. And that isn't made clear in the application. And as the police said, I feel like I am being expected to trust a lot of what's being said here today rather than have anything actually written down. And I think I specifically want some clarity on what is going to happen if more people than had been expected go to an event, that they become intoxicated, and mixed with the other licensed premises that will also be operating later towards the evening, how that is going to be controlled, because we have got the potential for that part of Hitchin to be turned into a sort of open air pub, and those who don't want to attend, that just going about their normal business, could be affected by that. I know as part of that there was an explanation about the bid having their own terms and conditions, which is superb. I do have a little bit of concern in that the Eat Al Fresco recently went ahead with terms and conditions that businesses could only have a food hygiene rating of 4 or above. And I recently had communication from Tom to say one of the businesses has actually got a 1, and could I go out and review their rating? So I really do applaud people having their own terms and conditions, but if you don't actually make sure you're abiding by your own rules, it gives me a little bit less confidence. It might have been just a one-off because it's a new scheme. And I do think, although we've said more than 500 people use Hitchin on a daily basis, and they do, it's a busy place, just think bringing in extra people at this time, and it's unfortunate it's this time, but at a time when we need to secure social distancing, I just don't have enough information. And I think that's something that we need to make a little bit more rigid in this, as to how we're going to make sure that the areas that are now going to be used for the sale of alcohol have some more controls about how we're going to move people on if too many people attend an event. And I'm a food safety officer at heart, so sorry to keep banging on about this, but I still would like to make sure that any stall at all, not just stalls selling high risk, actually has provision to properly wash their hands, because in the current climate, that's the only way we're going to remove viruses from people's hands. And I just would like to point out that an EMP is, as you would all know this, I assume, but an EMP is for the bid to make sure they've considered absolutely everything. And as an environmental health officer, I could never rubber stamp what they're doing. It's obviously their responsibility to make sure they're running their business safely. I think that's all I wanted. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. That's appreciated. Are there any other questions of fact, please? So starting with Simon on behalf of Hertfordshire Constabulary.
No, thank you.
Okay. And Tom, did you have any questions for Liz?
Yeah, I mean, the comment on people attending. I mean, we have for these events with our security have the ability to close stalls down if we feel it's necessary. The main point of this premises license is not to give us the ability to start running loads and loads of events. Not from our perspective, not a lot is going to change of what we did in 2019. One of the reasons we want this premises license in place is because by November, December 2019, we were running out of temporary events notices because the way temporary events notices run, they're not specific to a certain area. They took, say, the marketplace as a whole, and you can only have 16 of those throughout 1 year. So this is to make our community events where we have somebody selling, I don't know, for our food festival we had somebody selling some bottles of vodka to take away as sort of gift packets. In Christmas we have a mulled wine stall, and it's just to make the processes easier for us. We're not looking to turn this into a big outdoor pub, and the restrictions that we have on the proposed premises license of restricting it to 12 events per year and five alcohol sellers at any one time, I think meets that. Obviously it is a public space, and it is difficult to know how many people are going to come to it, and so we always plan our events on the worst case scenarios and put in the correct amount of security to make sure that we're able to manage people. But also the way we lay out the stalls is important with community events, to make sure that there is enough space for shopping. And the reason we exist as a company is to encourage people to use the shops, and so it's part of that objective of keeping the town vibrant through running these events, but also having a good balance between people going to these events and spending money at these events, and also spending money in the pubs and restaurants and retailers. But yeah, I mean, I think having an events management plan in place for these events would be really helpful, I think, for the safety advisory group to know specifically and ask the specific questions around these types of events, because with each event management plan, we actually have a stall layout there. We show where people are coming in. We show where the alcohol sellers are going to be. And I think that's important, that when we go to the safety advisory group, that they're able to bring us up on the things that Liz has mentioned, specifically to the event. You know, where are you placing these alcohol sellers? Having the stalls, having gaps between the stalls. I'm taking this as an angle from a situation that's not in a pandemic. Obviously, you know, our approach to events and our event management plan will look very different to what it would look like this year, say we were to run an event. Absolutely. Even without a pandemic, we always insist that food businesses and alcohol sellers have a hand washing facility on their stall, as well as following all the other guidelines that all the other rules, sorry, that is attached to their own license.
Thank you, Tom. Daniel, have you got any questions?
I do. I just wanted to go over, you're saying now, Tom, about having 12 events, because that's sort of like what you want to be aiming at as a regular. But you're saying you're running out of licenses for temporary event notices at 16 events. So are you expecting to have the 12 events and then still be able to have up to another 16 on top of that with temporary events notices?
No, so these are in the original application. It's 12 events over 500 people.
Thank you, my mistake.
Okay, thank you. And Sam, have you got any questions, please?
No, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we're just going to move on to closing statements, and I'd just like to come back to Molly as the licensing officer. Have you got any final submissions to the subcommittee, please?
That'll be me this time.
Okay, sorry,
Chair.
Steve.
If you haven't heard enough of my voice already. Just to clarify a couple of things that have come up during the hearing and a couple of procedural points. It's been mentioned a number of times that there are concerns that several promises have been made during the course of the hearing, and that effectively the council would be taking a chance on expecting those promises to be delivered. If the subcommittee has heard something in the hearing today that they think is appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, and without it wouldn't be able to grant a license, and of course it could be imposed as a condition on the license, so that it would then be a requirement to carry through what has been promised. Of course, conditions don't resolve every situation, and I think that's why there's been a lot of talk today about whether or not an event management plan would be appropriate. Now, if the subcommittee are minded to go down the event management plan route, I would urge you to have regard, as the licensing officer said, paragraphs 8.8 to 8.10 of her report about making any conditions enforceable. For example, if you say that an event management plan needs to be provided for a high risk event, that's just a hypothetical question. There's no definition of what a high risk event is. We as licensing officers couldn't enforce something where it's subjective. So you need to be very precise with the wording of any condition that you would be looking to put on. And to make it a meaningful condition, you would of course have to link it in some way to there would be an outcome if the event management plan wasn't suitable. If you just said an event management plan needed to be delivered, we could receive one page that says this is an event management plan, and that condition has been complied with, but it doesn't actually do what you were looking to do as a licensing subcommittee. So there would need to be some fallback of there needs to be an event management plan where no responsible authority raises an objection. And that's all covered off in the licensing officer's report. I think if you're minded to grant an application, you need to be very careful of the term events. There is the condition that's in the operating schedule for the application that's been put forward to say no more than 12 events that would involve the sale of alcohol. It might sound pedantic, but I have to make sure that anything that you grant is enforceable in a way that all parties can understand what it means. There is no definition of an event. You could have an event that lasts 365 days. That's only using one of the 12 events that a license would be provided. Equally, there might be an occasion where a very, very small stall of alcohol wanted to be put in the corner of the marketplace for something that was predominantly not alcohol-led. Is that an event? Because if it is, it's using one of the 12 events. So rather than just use the term event, there would need to be some context of what an event actually is. That's certainly something that's been applied to previous licenses. In terms of any decision that you make today, all parties to the hearing, that's the police, environmental health and the applicant, have a right of appeal against the subcommittee's decision. That right of appeal is to the local magistrates court, which for this area is Stevenage. That right of appeal should be lodged within 21 days of getting the council's written decision notice. Should be lodged with the clerk to the court. It should state the grounds on which the appeal is being lodged and the appeal fee should be paid. And also just to remind the subcommittee that were you minded to grant a licence today, there is the review process. So if anything went wrong in the future, any responsible authority, any other person could request a review hearing. I won't go through what a review hearing is, because everybody here is experienced in that. It's just a reminder that it's there. It's not a cure-all for everything. It's certainly not a charter to grant everything and then review it if it goes wrong. The subcommittee still need to balance up whether or not they believe this application as is or as amended in any way by the applicant or by themselves will adequately promote the licensing objectives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve. And then just, can we go back to Simon? Have you got any final submissions for the subcommittee, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. There's just been, since having this hearing, we've been talking about these sort of 12 events which would deviate this license from a normal license. I kind of just want to put a bit of emphasis. This is 12 events where there's over 500 people. So actually there would be an unlimited number of events under 500 people. So I don't feel like that that concern does change, particularly if we're talking about the high street and marketplace. 499 people in that area is still quite a congested amount of people when you consider, you know, the furniture, stalls and rigs that would also come in tandem with any sort of event. So I do want to just highlight that actually I feel like this 12 events thing is a bit of a misnomer when it comes to assessing risk around events. Also, Tom mentioned in his response to Liz that, you know, the reason why they're going for this license is they ran out of tens in previous years, and actually they're not looking to do anything different in the following years. However, the previous events were run on tens, which were limited to 499 people. And this application is to have at least 12, well, at most 12 events with over 500 people. So I'd argue that actually there is scope to be doing things differently with this application. And going back to the setup of these events and the use of third parties to facilitate the regulated entertainment, specifically the sale of alcohol. The terms and conditions proposed, well, certainly, if they're anything like the terms and conditions used as part of the alfresco dining, there is a lot of delegation of responsibility on the businesses that are looking to facilitate the sale and supply of alcohol. So much so that one of the documents I believe refers to the person selling alcohol as being the DPS, and I'm quite concerned that there will be an expectation by the applicant that the seller will be entirely responsible. The seller will have an awareness that the ultimate responsibility lies with the DPS, and therefore that fragmentation of standards and responsibilities between these different parties can cause an omission of responsibility. It's a complicated setup. It's not like a normal premises license where you've got a pub, a management team, a hierarchical group of employees where there is facility to make sure management training standards are upheld. This is a complicated setup for these events, and those complications open more risk. Thank you.
Thank you. And Liz, have you got any final submissions you'd like to make?
Perhaps just to an extent echoing what the police have said. So we're talking about 12 large events a year, all of which I understand the suggestion is they'll have an event management plan submitted, which myself and my colleagues will be expected to run through. So one event a month. while my job is public safety and to look after people that are living, working obviously in this district, to expect us to run our eyes over these event management plans when actually it's the responsibility of the person arranging the event is quite a big ask. So to have more detail around exactly what measures are in place would help a little. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, have you got any final submissions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that 12 events per year over 500 people, it may be yeah, I mean, that was the original restriction based on the whole town centre. We don't expect to run any more or looking to run large events on a regular basis. I think it just gives us the opportunity to have an event, a promoted event that's expected to attract over 500 people. I think there are, if there's one that we're unsure of numbers because it's new, and however, whether it's a community event or something on at Christmas, I think that we would definitely appreciate. Well, sorry, not appreciate. We definitely want to put in an events management plan because I think it's helpful to get the feedback. I mean, we've done events management plans for various events, and we understand over the last 10 years how to run them safely. So I think that it would, from a environmental health and perspective, I think that we've met most of the aspects that they're looking for already in the plan, because we've done them year on year. We've done dealing with security and waste and public safety and movement of people and layout stalls and things. So we submitted actually last year, no, at the beginning of this year, the Soapbox Derby events management plan, which we put a lot of work into so that we wouldn't come with something. We don't tend to put something very weak to the council and then have them having to constantly go back and forth and use a lot of officer time. We understand how to put them together and we know how to run events safely. And so putting events management plans to SAG, we expect to meet the objectives through that.
Sorry, just to arrive at our conclusions. So first of all, can we have the legal summarise any points, please, Teresa?
I think basically, I see the applicant, I understand, has amended his application. Is it just to cover the town centre and the high street to do with alcohol? Just for clarification, is that correct, applicant?
It's the marketplace and the high street.
It's the marketplace and the high street. Okay, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, basically the matters concerned obviously evolve around the operating schedule. So the panel members have to consider the application that's put forward by the applicant, including any conditions that is put forward, and representations by environmental health and the police in making the determination. Also consideration, and need to consider the licensing, council's licensing policy and the section 182 guidance. And obviously the issues regarding the management plan they would have to consider, and the amendments that there's going to be 12 large events a year over the with more than 500 people. So those are the observations regarding this. Obviously, obviously there is a right to appeal. The licence can be granted. The panel can add additional conditions to meet the 4 licensing objectives, or if they're not happy, they can refuse the application, but the original licence will still stand as it's a variation of premises licence. As I say, there is a right of appeal to the Magistrates Court within 21 days by the responsible authorities and the applicant. Should the so that those are my submissions.
Thank you very much. So we're now just going
Sorry,
to.
I just wanted to ask one question. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wondered if after this meeting, when the committee goes away, could they, for example, make a decision to reduce the amount of events per year, or is that something we agree now, or how does that work? Do you put it all? How does it work?
Well, have you got? Did you want to change the number of events per year?
Well, no,
then?
I'm just thinking that that we're not precious, I suppose, on 12 events per year, because the majority of our events are under 500 people. So I didn't know whether that was a discussion for now, or whether it's something the committee goes away and could actually come back on. Do you know what I mean? On a sort of counter proposal.
Yeah. How many events would you say are 500 plus a year then?
Well, I mean, historically, 500 plus a year, we probably have about 5 or 6 historically. So, I'm just saying that if people are uneasy about 12, that's fine, because actually, in reality, at 500 plus events, we wouldn't be looking at 12 on a yearly basis anyway.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Tom. So
Chair,
we're now going.
Sorry.
Sorry, no, go on, Simon.
I'm really sorry to interject. I just want to sort of clarify that a lot of my submissions haven't been specific to the plus 500 events. I think there is unidentified risk around the sub 500 events. I don't want this to be seen as a as a silver bullet. That's
yes, no, absolutely. I think you put your concerns across very clearly. Thank you, Simon. Right, so we're going to retire now to discuss and to make a decision. So we will, yeah. So who's doing? Is it Steve doing the Matthew doing the breakaway rooms?
Yeah. So the subcommittee will now retire to make a decision in private. Public attending the meeting are welcome to wait to listen to the decision. However, this may take some time. So once the subcommittee has made a decision, it will be announced via the live stream. And as announced at the beginning of the meeting, if members believe that the decision will take too long, to avoid parties waiting, they may decide not to announce the decision live today. If this is the case, an announcement will be made to this effect by the subcommittee and the meeting will be closed. The decision will then be announced in writing within 5 working days of the meeting. So what will happen now, I'm going to ask Mark to enable a breakout room. If you can accept the breakout room, and you'll go into another separate meeting, and the meeting will continue to be live streamed, but we'll put a hold notice up on the screen, and you'll be part of a different meeting. So the applicant and the other persons, they're welcome to remain until you come back, but it may take some time.
Can I clarify? Can I clarify, Chair, that I'm no longer required now?
Steve, can you advise, please? I'm presuming so, but
it's not required. No.
Yeah, no. There you go. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Okay, so we've got the breakout rooms coming up, so we should all join them. Thank you. Right, I'm just going to email if you can you hear me, or I'm better off taking this out. Is it better off? Can you hear me better? Daniel or Sam, can you just put your thumbs up? Yeah, can you hear me? It's just not highlighting it.
It's better off.
Okay,
Councillors, don't forget you're live streaming when you come back into this room.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I confirm, Councillor Nash, that the breakout room's finished?
Yes, thank you. I can't see you. It's a bit disorientating.
Yeah, no, just close the room, so that's fine.
Thank you, Mark. Are you there, Matthew?
Yes, Councillor Nash, I'm here.
Okay, are we all back, do you think, so we could recommence? Oh, there you are.
Yes. So do you want me to do a roll call just to confirm everyone's here?
Andrew, thank you.
Fine. Okay. So I'll start with the members first. Dan, Councillor Allen.
I'm present.
Councillor Nash is here. Councillor North.
Here.
Thank you. That's all we need, I think. Steve Cobb.
Yes.
Molly Shields.
Yeah.
Teresa Campion.
Yeah, Teresa's on mute.
Are you here, Teresa?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. Here.
I think Ms. DeVere has left the meeting, so that's fine. And then Sergeant Mullen, are you still here?
Yes.
Yeah. And Tom Hardy.
Yes.
Thank you. So that's everyone, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want, I'll just say then. So, Mark, can you please confirm that the live stream and audio recording has recommenced? Too hot.
It's still going. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. So, thank you ever so much for being so patient whilst we were deliberating. We've obviously taken everything into account whilst we've made our decision. And I'm just going to read out the decision notice to you. She says. Right, so I'm going to get it up on this laptop because it's not working on there. Okay, so we have made the decision not to grant this application for the variation of the existing premises licence under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003. We've read all the material presented to us and has listened to all the evidence and submissions. We've considered the national guidance and the statement of licensing policy and has come to this decision to refuse the application. The subcommittee have found that the licensing objectives have not been met by the application and is not satisfied that any amendments to the application or conditions attached to the licence could ensure that the licensing objectives are met. The licensable activities, timing and conditions on the existing premises licence remain unchanged. The effect of failure to comply with any of the conditions attached to the licence or certificate is a criminal offence, which upon conviction could result in an unlimited fine or up to 6 months imprisonment or both. The subcommittee has considered the guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, the April 2018 version, in reaching this decision. And there's several sections that we found to be of relevance in this decision, which obviously you'll get a printed copy of this, is 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.16, 1.17, 2.1, 2.5, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, 2.22, 2.23, 8.41, 8.42, 8.43, 8.44, 8.46, 9.38, 9.42, 9.43, 9.44, 10.8, 10.9 and 10.10. The subcommittee has considered the NHDC statement of licensing policy in reaching this decision, and we found the following sections to be of relevance in reaching this decision: B6, B8, B10, C4.2, D1.6, D1.8, D2.1, D2.5, D2.6, D2.7, D6.2, D6.3, D6.7, D6.8, D6.9, D8.1, D8.2, D8.3, E2.1, E2.3, E2.4.1, E2.7.1, E2.7.2, F1.3, F4.1, F4.2, F6.1.2, F8.1, F8.2, G1.1, G1.2, G1.3, G1.5, G5.1, G5.2, G5.3, G5.4, G5.5, G6.1.3, H2.1, H2.2, and H2.3. The rationale for the decision: firstly, the licensing subcommittee, in making this decision, took into the consideration the application, including the operating schedule amendments to the application made on the day of the hearing to the proposed area of sale, supply of alcohol, being Market Square and High Street, and the number of events over 500 people. Point 2, there were concerns over the lack of detail in the operating schedule in relation to meeting the 4 licensing objectives, particularly in relation to public safety issues. Point 3, the subcommittee are also concerned over the lack of an EMP submitted an agreement with the police and environmental health around public safety over how crowd control was being managed and the ingress and egress from the premises, which inherently is a public space. Point 4, the applicant did not address the police concerns over how he was going to control intoxicated people becoming attracted to and involved in events in public spaces, increasing the risk of crime and disorder. There are concerns over the interaction of the general public in the area not attending the event. Point 4, consideration was given in making this decision to the statutory guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and Council's licensing policy, as well as representations made by the responsible authority. This decision takes immediate effect. We would, as a panel, we've agreed that we would recommend that you take all of this feedback on board and reapply for the licence, meeting all of the points that we've outlined. If you wish to make an appeal, you can make this appeal as the holder of the premises licence or any responsible authority. The appeal and appeal fee must be lodged with the clerk to Stevenage Magistrates Court no later than 21 days after the day on which the parties were notified by the licensing authority of this decision. At any stage following the grant of a response, you can have a right to review. I don't think I need to go through that, do I, Steve? The right to review?
No, I think everybody's aware of that, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so again, thank you very much for your time today. I realise that'd be disappointing, Tom, but we would encourage you to go away and review what you've submitted and work with the police and environmental health on a resubmission of the application. So thank you all very much, and I close this meeting.